April 3rd. It still feels forever away that the draft's going to be here. So we have a ton more episodes where we're going to get into depth on all these draft prospects and the targets and kind of what we think will happen with the Colts. But I think this is a good time in the offseason to take stock of where you're at. I think predictions are a good way to do that, to assess honestly how you see the team and how you see the season going. So you can take stock and see kind of what you need to focus on and prioritize moving forward. So yeah, it's going to be good. Definitely, you said way too early. I know that's definitely true. We know Chris Ballard loves to build through the draft, so there's a lot of pieces still to come. And the roster construction, it never ends after the draft with Chris Ballard either. He's always wheeling and dealing and churning the bottom of that roster and looking for ways to improve it. So the roster is going to look a lot different when we head into training camp, I'm sure. But yeah, good to kind of get a sense of where we're at this point.
Yeah, and this is a team that is ambiguous. I mean, I know that there's the draft coming up, and after the first round, there's no telling where they're going to go.
Yeah.
So I think that it's much needed to throw some of these predictions out before the guys get picked in the draft, because then even if they do select a Tyler Warren or a safety or a linebacker or a guy like Carson Schlesinger, it's something like that. It's good to see if some of these are still relevant, So yeah. We'll have to see what happens. We're confident in these way too early predictions, but we do have some chats here. The one and only Bring the Juice podcast, absolute legends over there. Cody Felger, how you doing? Derek Larger, how you doing, boys? It's very good to see you in here. Chet Menyo, hope everyone's having a good evening. We hope that you're having one too. Sean Conkright, as always, thank you so much for being here. Salutations, gentlemen. And then, will do. It's been way too long. Definitely have to jump back on there. Are we trading for a tight end before the draft? I think that you're referencing, Tony, I think you're referencing Dallas Goedert. I very seriously doubt it. In fact, before we even jump into it, Noah, you've broken down why Dallas Goedert. Production, fantastic. Ties to Steichen, fantastic. Yeah. Offensive prowess with Steichen and, the way they run the football and kind of how they did in Philly, amazing. But there is something as far as that contract that is a little bit of a pitfall. So go ahead and tell Tony what it is.
Yeah, I get the conversation. It makes sense on a lot of levels in terms of the ties with Steichen and the need that they've had at tight end for quite some time, and the glaring hole they have on the roster with maybe two, if you're being generous, rosterable players currently on the team at tight end. Yeah. So the needs there, the fits there, it all makes sense. But then you're just considering that contract where he's got a few void years at the end of the deal that's going to cost around $20 million. I mean, it would take some serious restructuring work. It would take some serious negotiations for the Eagles to take a really significant part of that and eat that money in a trade, which I think seems unlikely. So I think it makes sense on a lot of levels, but that one level in terms of compensation and what that would end up costing the Colts, I think would be too much to ask for them at this point. If he is a cut candidate for the Eagles at some point, and the Eagles do end up eating that hit to move on from a guy like Dallas Goedert, very much the Colts, I think, would be in the running there to sign a guy like Goedert if he was released.
Yeah, and hey, at the end of the day, I think that Indianapolis, they probably saw that, and they're probably like, hey, like Noah said, if he's cut, perfect. If not, you do have to give up assets to get him, and then you do have a crazy contract that has all sorts of pitfalls in it. So I think that they're also looking to the draft. I really think they just want a rookie. They want to be able to get a guy that's got a high ceiling. Warren, Loveland, Taylor, really one of those guys. So before we get too much into the chat here, we got to start to kind of dive into these predictions. Now, with some of these, they're out there. Right. Mm-hmm. With others, they're almost common sense, but we're going to do 5 from me, 5 from Noah, 10 total. And chat, seriously, if you guys have predictions, throw them in there. We will address them. We will talk about them. We love making predictions. We're going to have an episode, obviously, now before the draft, and then later on after the draft, we'll have another one. And then, of course, we'll have to have one more mock draft before the draft actually happens.
And tell us if you agree or you disagree. Me and Drake are obviously, I think, just running through these at the beginning. We have at least one that we're very clearly on the opposite sides in terms of predictions on here. So, yeah, give us a thumbs up, thumbs down, depending on what we're saying here also.
That's right. So this first one, this has to do with a defender that had a really rough year last year. Not even necessarily on the field, but personal reasons. mental reasons, not to say that he's not mentally sound, just a lot of things happened in his life that spilled into his play. And you go from this incredible 2023 to a season where people are like, what happened? And that's Charvarius Ward. You know, we're going to go ahead and dive right into this. This is my first one, and then we'll pass it off to Noah. And I predict that Charvarius Ward is going to be an all-pro again. Now, I know that, you know, when you come off of a season where you don't play all the games, you come off of a year where you had 23 passes defended in 2023, you hit that second team all-pro, you hit your Pro Bowl, 5 interceptions, 1 taken back for a touchdown, countless tackles made, countless plays made, really. To go from that to a down season and then bounce back as an all-pro, I think that that's pretty difficult. But here's my biggest factor in this, and that's Mr. Lou Anarumo. Lou Anarumo is going to let this guy glide around with the number 1 receiver. Lou Anarumo is going to put him in a position where he's going to be able to use every strength he has as a defensive back to get back to those lockdown ways. You didn't see it last year. And again, he said in his press conference, he said that he's hungry again. He's ready again. He's got the love of football back. I mean, given what he went through, it's understandable. And, you know, dare I say, it's kind of crazy that some guys might have retired after what he went through. So what are your thoughts on this one? We can discuss it in depth, but Charvarius Ward is a hell of a football player that's only 1 year removed from leading the league in pass deflections and being an absolute menace to guys like DK freaking Metcalf.
Yeah, I think the talent's there, obviously. All pro is always going to be a hard thing to measure up to and reach again. I think you reach that one time in your career and then you kind of have a fall off year. Like you mentioned, it's always going to be hard to get back up to that level. You worry a little bit just because it seems like when play drops off for cornerbacks, it tends to just be off. But I'm thinking that the situation surrounding Charvarius Ward and that performance last year tells a little bit of a different story. There's a little more context and nuance to what went on with his performance last year than most corners when they have a down year. So, I mean, we'll wait and see. I think you mentioned that thing about Lou Anarumo having him shadow the number 1. Honestly, I think maybe I'm sure that's going to be more valuable for the Colts. I think that might make it harder for him to be an all-pro, though, because he's going to be going against that number 1 snap to snap. So he's going to be giving up some receptions and some touchdowns. It's going to happen just over the course of the season. That happens to the best corners, and it definitely happens to the best corners when they're shadowing the best wide receiver 1 on the opposite side. And you know that the Colts are going to be playing against some big time number 1s. Nico Collins coming at you twice a year, namely next year. I think is going to be a big deal for Charvarius Ward. So I think the talent's there. I think it's going to be different to see him play in this scheme because I don't think he's been this bona fide guy as a cornerback 1 in terms of how they scheme the defense around him. In the 49ers defense, he was just kind of on one side and would be there, and now he gets the chance to follow into the slot and onto both sides. It's going to be interesting to watch. I think, he has that ability to take that one extra step, given that extra responsibility in this new defensive scheme.
Yeah, and I really like what DSG Goodbar said here. Ward changing scenery was absolutely necessary for him to be the player he's meant to be. You know, I think that's a profound statement. I mean, this is going to be his 3rd team. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is going to be his 8th season in the NFL, and he had 4 years in Kansas City, played fantastic there. He had 3 with the San Francisco 49ers. But really what sticks out about Charvarius Ward also is his hustle to make tackles. I mean, he had 87 in 2022. He had 72 in 2023. He had 3 for loss in 2022. So this is a guy that he just makes constant plays. He flies to the football. I mean, out of those 87, 59 were solo. And then last year he had 56 that were solo. This is a guy that gets the ball carrier down on his own. But really it's all about changing the scenery. And I think what DSG Goodbar is saying here is that it's Lou Anarumo. You know, you're putting he said in his breakdown with Colts writer JJ Stankovic, or I think it's Stankovic, that, you know, they've got an elite corner to cover elite receivers. And he broke down his film, and you can tell Lou Anarumo, he had to have had a say in getting Charvarius Ward. You've got pretty much, I think, the top level cornerback that you could have gotten. As far as defensive backs or defensive backfield, maybe Javon Holland was number 1. But this other one from Bring the Juice, this is a good one. Ward has to be a similar type impact to Gilmore from 2022, with him being younger and looking to have an edge. Think he think he definitely can be just as good. Look, man, Stephon Gilmore, a
Yeah.
lot of people, unless you covered the team or unless you watched this football team enough, forget from that absolute garbage, just freak of a year, that dude was a lockdown piece. He did not let up a lot. He looked great, even though he was, a super veteran.
Mhm.
If Charvarius Ward, with the talent the Colts have and the coordinator they have, this ain't Gus Bradley. All right. Gilmore had Bradley. Okay. This is Lou Anarumo, an ever evolving coach, if you will. If he can get anything close to what Gilmore was, that's fantastic.
Mhm.
You're already happy. You're already pleased with that. What are your thoughts on that statement right there? I mean, if he can be Stephon Gilmore from 2022, I think that's pretty good. I think that's definitely worth the 3 years, $54 million.
Yeah. Yeah, like you mentioned, that's the last time that the Colts had that bona fide cornerback one was Stephon Gilmore in 2022. I mean, that's a former NFL Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, you're talking about all-pro status with Charvarius Ward. I think Gilmore took that even a step higher in terms of the accolades that he had coming into the Colts. I definitely was a little bit older at that point, was able to produce, and it was clear how highly the Colts organization, the Colts coaches thought of Stephon Gilmore when they brought him in, and even as they let him go. To this day, still the only Colts player that's worn a single digit that's not a receiver or a quarterback. I just don't think they give that to guys. And I guess Stephon Gilmore asked for it, and they're like, okay, we'll make the exception for you in this case. And then that trade request, he signed that 2-year deal with the Colts, and then just after 1 year, kind of wanted to explore something that better fit his situation. Chris Ballard gave him the go ahead. And then on good enough terms, Stephon Gilmore was with the Colts organization that he was actually referring Cam Bynum to them. Cam Bynum said he reached out to Stephon Gilmore when he was considering his options in free agency, and Gilmore spoke highly of the Colts. So, yeah, just nothing but good things to say about Stephon Gilmore from 2022 with his Colts season, and just onward his relationship with everybody in the organization since then. But yeah, I think one thing that Ward has going for him is he's going to be a little bit more versatile than Gilmore said. Like you mentioned, that scheme that they were running with Gus Bradley, where Gilmore was essentially on one side and locking down that side of the field. Charvarius Ward just allows the defense to play a little bit more offensively, if you will, and give you that chess piece that can match up.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll just highlight a couple other comments here before we get to somebody that I'm sure Noah is chomping at the bit to talk about. So the Colts kind of took for granted the season Gilmore had. They can't make that mistake again. I don't think they're going to. 2022 was a learning lesson for this franchise. It also shows you can't just hire a freaking former player. That was more of a culture thing. Tracy Johnson says Gilmore also had a couple of game-winning plays that year. One that sticks out the most is against the Denver Broncos, where, Wilson still threw it in front of his receiver, but hey, Gilmore had to catch it and end the game. And then, of course, I believe with Lou's defense and the new additions to our D, Indy's going to have an elite unit. We'll see. I don't know about elite, but I will say that this is going to be a better unit than last year. While it doesn't take much, I also expect them to be, I would say top half of the league. And if they're fringe top 10 or inside the lip of that top 10, you're freaking excited. That's great. So that's the first one. So this next one is regarding a guy that when he was drafted, not a lot of people really looked at his name and said, wow, this is going to be an impact player. This guy's going to start. This guy's going to make plays. So Noah, I'll go ahead and let you kind of jump into this one, and then I'll bring up the banner. This is definitely somebody Noah has talked about time and time again, and with good reason.
Yeah, so I wanted to put this one right after the discussion about Charvarius Ward, because I think that honestly, I think it's going to weigh a lot on the terms of the success that Jalen Jones has this season. My prediction here is that Jalen Jones will be the undisputed starter on the outside opposite Charvarius Ward, and that'll continue all season. And it doesn't sound that bold. This isn't really bold predictions, but it's just early ones. I think no matter who they add at this point at corner, they could even go someone in the first round. I think Jalen Jones is still likely to handle that spot. Juju Brents, that includes him. Even if he stays healthy, I think Jalen Jones is going to be that guy. And then I think Samuel Womack is another potential contender at that outside spot, but I think Jalen Jones will be able to maintain that starting spot over him as well. And I think one thing, we were talking about Charvarius Ward and his ability to shadow that number one receiver. I think that makes the job easier on Jalen Jones in terms of the assignments that he's going to have to go up against every snap. We saw some ugly plays for Jalen Jones this past season against number one receivers, a couple touchdowns given up. But But overall, solid play, consistent play. He showed some flashes of some ball production. Those 2 interceptions in that one game that he had this past season, which was nice to see because his rookie year, he didn't get his hands on the ball that often. And then a lot of pass deflections, especially on those in-breaking routes. Jalen Jones was all over it. And I think having him be able to play a little bit more man coverage and press coverage and use that strength and the length that he has is going to play to his advantage. And so far, he's been an average starting corner in the NFL at this point in his career, and I think he just has the ability to go up from here. I think he's 23 this season, still really young going into his third year, and he'll be 23. And then just that heat that's going to be taken off of him when they've got 2 other DBs there in Kenny Moore and Charvarius Ward that are going to be flying around and used as chess pieces. Allows Jalen Jones to just kind of sit there and handle his business at that opposite starting corner spot.
Yeah, and today is Jalen Jones' birthday. So if he's watching, happy freaking birthday to you, pal. So something that's really interesting about Jalen Jones, okay, you look at last year, he started 10 games. He did play all 17, but only 44 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. He did have 5 passes defended, no picks, just kind of like statistically it's a ho-hum season. But when you look at this year, so I'm just going to spout off some Pro Football Focus metrics and then his rank out of 222 eligible cornerbacks, and then just some of his stats from Pro Football Reference. So we'll start with Pro Football Focus. 78 solo tackles. That's second out of every single cornerback. Okay, that's fantastic. His pass breakups, they have 10. Pro Football Reference has 12, but that's 6th. Okay. His receptions allowed, 55. That's 13th. Okay. Back in college, when Jalen Jones was drafted, there was not that much tape on him.
Yeah.
All right. Like you couldn't really find a lot of tape. And that's because he wasn't targeted. He wasn't thrown at because he would remove a receiver. This is a physical corner. He's not going to beat you in a foot race. Look, full disclosure, if this guy lets someone get by him or a step on him, it could spell trouble, but that's also the case for Juju Brents. Okay, so I think that when the Colts drafted Jones, they wanted him to be that press guy. And now you've got Lou Anarumo, who is going to give these guys the opportunity to play right up on guys. And I think that Jalen Jones is going to have a season like he hasn't had yet. Like Noah said, I agree with that. I mean, right now you're looking at outside of Charvarius Ward on this side and following, you're looking at Sam Womack. I don't see that. You're looking at Juju Brents. I don't see that, and Kenny Moore's in the slot. So this right here makes a lot of sense. He also had the 9th most coverage snaps and the 2nd most run defense snaps. I mean, this guy was very, very versatile. The Colts clearly saw something in him. But the biggest one, man, that really stands out is the guy had 100 tackles. That's kind of indicative of Nick Cross's numbers too, where the Colts just got gashed in the ground game, right? But he still had to make those plays. And against the Chicago Bears, he made Caleb Williams look silly. All right. He had a couple of great interceptions. One was a tip that he caught and tiptoed both feet in. So you saw that athleticism that he possesses. I love this. I think Jalen Jones is on track for a breakout year. Yeah. This one right here is good from DSG Goodbar. Jalen Jones will become an overall better corner with Ward and Womack in the DB room. So much knowledge for him to sponge up. And we're talking, he just had his birthday today. Dude's 23. He's going into his 3rd freaking NFL season. He was like 20 when he was drafted. So this is exciting. If you had to guess, do you think that he can get more than 2 interceptions, or do you think Jalen Jones is more of a, I'm going to smother the crap out of you, you're not going to get targeted, you're not going to catch any passes type guy?
Yeah, I think he has the potential to get more. I think if you've got Charvarius Ward blanketing the number 1, and he's doing pretty well in terms of coverage in that matchup, then they're going to, by default, go more often to that number 2 option there that Jalen Jones is covering. So yeah, I mean, I think it's very possible that he's going to get targeted a little bit more. You mentioned that tackle stat that he has, and I don't have the exact numbers on this past season, but at least in his rookie season, he was up near the top of the league in terms of yards of separation at the catch point for receivers. So even when he was giving up those catches, he was within a yard, able to make those tackles for short gains afterwards. So you didn't see him get like toasted or burnt very often, which is kind of what you worry about with a guy who doesn't have that 4.4 speed or whatever. So yeah, I think the potential's there for one, him to be targeted more, and two, for him to just be able to fall in line when he's going to be at those contested, or he's not getting beat with a ton of separation. So he's going to be able to get his hands on the ball more often, able to tip some more. I think whether he gets more than 2 interceptions is debatable, but I think even if he doesn't, I think he's going to be able to be in a position to create some interceptions on some tips or some overthrows because of the coverage he provides.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, Jalen Jones has been an absolute steal. He has been an absolute steal. Seventh rounder. He plays like he's definitely more his value is like second or third rounder. The way that he has played at times, and I like this one. Before we get to my next one, Patrick Rye, you're an absolute menace. Way too early 2025 prediction. Drake expecting kid 2. One kid is enough right now. You stop that. All right. You stop that right now, Patrick. And then you've got another one that I'm not going to pull up here. You're an absolute menace as usual. The CFO absolutely dropping bombs in the chat. But this next one is a player that I was so excited. I was a little confused at first when they drafted him. As I thought about it and as it kind of like sat in my mind, I really started to like it because I thought he was the most pro-ready pass rusher, and that's Leatu Latu. And I'm predicting that he's going to hit 8+ sacks and 5+ forced fumbles in 2025. Now, here's the reasoning behind that. He wasn't supposed to play all these snaps. He was supposed to be more of a situational guy. And at times, he did struggle against the run, but you didn't want him in this position. You know, you draft him, fast forward to the offseason, Samson Ebukam goes down with an Achilles injury, and you don't really have anyone else to turn to. Dio wasn't the guy that's just going to start all the time, and you used a 15th overall pick on him, the first defensive player taken out of the 24 draft. So he ended with 4 sacks. He ended with 32 tackles. He ended with 5 tackles for loss. Okay, nothing too crazy, but it's those 3 forced fumbles that stick out to me. And nothing sticks out more than when they were playing the Chicago Bears. They needed to stop. The Bears were knocking on they were at least attempting to knock on the door and take the lead on a drive near the end of the game. And Latu shut that door right in Caleb Williams' face. He took the football away. It was his first forced fumble, his first big play as an NFL player. Zaire Franklin and everybody took him down to the end zone to celebrate with the fans. You know, I really, really like Leatu Latu here. So what are your thoughts on Latu? I think that he's poised for a breakout season, at least to his – not anything hardcore, but I think 8+ sacks. I think if you got a defensive end who has 8+ sacks, that's great. That's another reason why I think Kwity Paye is pretty solid. He's got 8+ sacks in 2 straight years. What are your thoughts on number 97?
Yeah, no, I think that 8+ sacks is a good number to aim for. I think that maybe should have been the number we were aiming for in his rookie year. I think expectations were a little bit high just because his reputation preceded him as the most polished pass rusher in the draft and the first overall defensive player taken. I think that kind of set some unfair expectations for what Latu should be hitting. At the end of the day, if you're picking in 13, even 14, like the Colts are picking this upcoming year, you shouldn't expect your first round pick to be this huge impact guy unless he's turning into your wide receiver 1 immediately or playing quarterback for you. You shouldn't expect that kind of contribution for a rookie. But yeah, I think year 2, I think what we kind of thought about him when he was drafted was that it was a low floor at the very least. And I think he showed that in his rookie year that he was capable, and he wasn't going to be a bust. He was capable to come in on some of these plays and provide a solid amount of pressure. That 5+ forced fumble number, I think, is the big number here in terms of this prediction that's a little bit more bold. But I mean, he's shown that ability to be able to get to the quarterback and swat that away in this past season, just in his rookie year. So I think when we get into this next season, just the role that he's going to play, I think he's going to find the quarterback a little bit more consistently and grow into this role. I think the Trey Hendrickson role that Lou Anarumo employed last season, I think Latu's going to slide right into that with the Colts scheme this year. Just kind of being on the receiving end of a little bit more diverse set of twists and stunts that you're going to see on the defensive line that's going to allow Latu some different matchups throughout the game. And I think they're going to be seeking some matchups that are going to allow him to get to the quarterback and provide that kind of pressure. So I think it's just all lining up for him to have a step in production. Yeah, that 5+ forced fumbles is that number that sticks out to me, and I think it's kind of luck of the draw when it comes to turnovers. So you hope he hits that number, but yeah, if you get those kind of numbers, even though that 8 sack number is not super sexy, and you want to see those double digits, it's all about those turnovers, and that's what changes the game.
Yeah, it's all about pressure. It's all about pressures, and he was, I believe, Latu was second, or he was either second or third on the team in pressures. Okay, and look, this is a great question from NFL Nerd. By the way, NFL Nerd, if you look right, let's see, if you look right there, there's the. I'm just going to keep on saying it until you say something in that chat. There's that Alec Pierce jersey. So NFL Nerd says Latu question. Did he perform to your expectations as a rookie? I think he did. And you know what? He was compared a lot to Jared Verse. Yeah. Yes, Jared Verse had 77 pressures. Fair. Okay. Yes, Jared Verse had 11 tackles for loss. He had, let me see here, a whopping 18 quarterback hits. That's impressive. But you know what? He had 2 forced fumbles. He had 2 passes defended. He had 4.5 sacks.
Yeah.
Latu had more forced fumbles than Jared Verse and only a half sack less. Now I understand that there's distance between these two in the overall numbers in certain areas, but Latu was not intended to play this much. Again, he was supposed to rotate in with Samson Ebukam, who, by the way, led the team in sacks. He was second in pressures to only DeForest Buckner when he last played. So I think that Latu was supposed to learn on the go, not be thrown into the starting role. And I think that he was different than Jared Verse in many ways. You got one guy who's a finesse guy and a technical guy like Latu. Then you got Jared Verse, who can be technical, but he's just an absolute bowling ball. I mean, so I think that he did. Now, did he live up to 15th overall? Depends on what you expect. Okay. I think that if you're expecting him to go out there and get 10 freaking sacks, I don't know if any pass rusher can do that in their first year. It's really difficult to do that against massive offensive tackles. So I do think that I think he lived up to those expectations. Real quick, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say just no. He did not perform to my expectations, but
that's fair.
My expectations were too high looking back, so I think that's fully on me. I think Latu did perform to the Colts' expectations, and they're very happy with the way that his rookie season panned out, and I think they're really encouraged with what they're going to see going forward from him. So I don't think there's any alarms or flags to be raised about Latu. I think he hit that high floor that you expected him to have as a rookie, and he's just only got room to grow from here.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, man, as long as he takes a step forward, even if it's 7 sacks, even if it's 6.5, I am blown away that he only started 1 game. He did have limited snaps still. They still did not thrust him out there to take all the snaps. He still had 3 forced fumbles. That's impressive. There's something to be said about a guy who can just take that football away, especially when it's crunch time like he did against the Bears. So this next one here, this is so we'll go ahead and get off of the – here we go, yeah. So this next one here has to do with special teams, and I love it. I absolutely love this one. So I'll let Noah go ahead and dive into this one. This is a guy who got some competition, actually, and Noah's prediction about a former Colt being re-signed came true. So, Noah, I'll go ahead and let you dive into this one.
Yeah, and I think maybe this one is one we don't have to spend that much time on, seeing we're already around a half hour. We got a lot to get through. But I did want to throw this in there just because the kind of the question marks that have been surrounding him since the signing, and that's Matt Gay. And the signing of Spencer Schrader in what appears to be a kicking competition. I think just last year, Matt Gay was perfect from under 50, and he was rough beyond 50. I think that's fair to say. I think if you go into an NFL season and you get the performance from your kicker that you got from Matt Gay last season, I think you'll be relatively happy. There's a lot of NFL teams that were in a much worse kicking situation than the Colts were last year. I think the thing that makes it burn a little bit is just the contract that they gave him in free agency. Which I don't think it's not hindering the Colts at this point. It's not like that extra $3 million they would have allowed them to go out and get Trey Hendrickson this offseason. That's not going to be the difference in the Colts being able to make a move. So I think you just kind of take it with what you get. You have a reliable kicker from inside 50 on your roster. I think that's good. I think he was also maybe 2 kicks away from being above average, above 50 in terms of his 50 yards field goals. So he wasn't that many kicks off from being good in every area of the field. So I think you see a bounce back this year, and I even use bounce back loosely because I don't think it was that bad of a season for Matt Gay this past season. But I think that redemption will come in the form of at least one 50-plus yard game winner coming up next season, and he'll maintain his consistency from within 50. He'll be back in the good graces of Colts fans. That $3.5 million or whatever won't be a waste in the eyes of Colts fans, and we can just cool it on the kicker talk for a while.
Yeah, and look, just to kind of put a bow on this quickly, Matt Gay, I mean, 31 for 37. Sure, you miss those 6 from 50 plus yards, but I mean, my God, he was perfect with his extra points. He was perfect from 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49. There are not many kickers that can do that. There's just not many kickers that can be perfect in 3 of the 4 distance categories. That's impressive. And if he even goes over 50% of his field goal attempts from 50 plus yards, that's great. And don't forget, he hit a game-winning field goal. I believe it was over 50 yards against the Baltimore Ravens just a year ago. So, I mean, Matt Gay is a quality kicker, and he's a high-quality kicker. Is he worth the expensive ass contract? Probably not, but I don't know if any kicker is. I mean, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's the biggest one they've ever given a kicker in history. Yeah. So it's definitely maybe not on that level, but Matt Gay, fully expect him to bounce back from 83.8%. That's the second lowest of his entire career. So this next one is one of my favorite players on the entire roster. I do think that there's a little bit less confidence because he only played 10 games, but it's Jalen Carlies, and it's that he's going to have 3+ interceptions. Now, the thing about Carlies is that he's a converted safety into a linebacker. He is incredibly fast. He is, by the way, Tony, that's right. Hit that like button. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate your support and your emphasis because, hey, that helps us get to more Colts fans, those likes and subscriptions. So appreciate that. But, yeah, man, Jalen Carlies, man, you just saw so much potential in this guy. Multi-role linebacker. He's going to fit Lou Anarumo's evolving scheme so well. I really do think that he is going to blossom as that second linebacker. I think he's got more of a ceiling than a thumper like Zaire Franklin.
Yeah.
And based, whoever they do pick in the draft, I do believe it's going to be a guy like Demetrius Knight Jr. or Carson Schlesinger. But Jalen Carlies has got all of the tools and intangibles as a linebacker to make these 3 interceptions happen. So what are your thoughts here on Jalen Carlies? Just so everyone's aware, an 83.1 overall coverage grade per PFF, fourth out of 189 eligible linebackers. I think this guy's got breakout and just true starter written all over him.
Yeah, I think just based on how the depth chart is shaking out right now, and they haven't really added anything at linebacker, and EJ Speed's for sure on the Houston Texans. He signed that deal during the past last week, I think it was. So you've got Jalen Carlies kind of penciled in, barring any future additions at that starting spot. Carlies last season had 86 snaps in pass coverage. EJ Speed had over 500, I believe. So just by sheer volume, he's going to have the opportunity to hit this prediction with 3+ interceptions. I know there was one. I think he just had one pass breakup this past year in those 86 coverage snaps, but it was right in his hands and he dropped it. So he's got the ability to be in the right position to make those plays. Man, Drake, you're making these predictions hard for me with all these. The turnovers, just I always view those as 50-50 shots that you're going to get it or you don't. They always seem so up in the air, and those numbers can go up or down. But based on the amount that he's going to be on the field, based on what the depth chart looks like currently, and yeah, his ability in coverage is far beyond what EJ Speed was, or even in his rookie season as a 5th round pick. So yeah, I think he definitely has that ability to hit 3+ interceptions, and the Colts really need a guy to be that game changer. They had that game changer at linebacker in Shaq Leonard, who always seemed to be in the right spot at the right time to pick up a fumble or have an interception thrown right into his chest or his stomach. He just always seemed to be in the right place. The Colts could really use somebody to, whether he's not as around the ball as often, maybe just makes himself in the right position based on just his pure coverage ability and his athleticism to be able to drop out of his zone fast enough to bait a quarterback. I think he does have that ability to get 3 or more interceptions this upcoming season.
Hell yeah. And I think that again, and this is going to be, we're going to say this ad nauseum. Lou Anarumo is going to change the culture of this defense. He is going to bring, I think, some interesting conclusions once the 2025 season's over. Some of these guys, I think, are going to have completely different outcomes.
Yeah.
Guys that really stand out that are going to benefit from him, Leatu Latu, Charvarius Ward. I think Kenny Moore is going to truly benefit from having Lou Anarumo. And then both safeties, Cam Bynum and Nick Cross, those guys are going to thrive because that is really where Lou Anarumo's bread and butter gets spread, is that secondary. So Carlisle, though, is another one. Okay, you saw it in Cincinnati. He was able to get those linebackers in a good position. So I really like how I can't remember who said. Oh yeah, Tony Pelletieri said Jermaine Pratt. Hey, that's another guy that's got ties to Lou Anarumo. Tackle machine, absolute tackle machine. Just piled him. That's another guy. Who knows if they go out and get him? I still think they're looking more into the draft. But look, man. Jalen Carlisle's one of my favorite players. I think he's got some serious upside, and I think he's got the right coordinator to make those interceptions happen and get in between the passing lanes and the quarterback and receiver. So this next one, not going to make many fans happy. Not all these predictions are going to make fans happy, guys. Okay, sometimes you got to really be realistic. So Noah, I'm going to get you to go on this one. This is a guy who silenced a lot of people. Including myself. I know that when they drafted his potential replacement, competition, which now everybody has heard that word a million times since Daniel Jones got signed. But this had to do with a skill position. One guy that was drafted to potentially replace this guy looked awful, regardless of inaccuracy from the quarterback. And then another guy stood tall and was one of the most electric offensive weapons, and that's Alec Pierce. So we're going to go ahead and get into your prediction here.
Yeah, and all the predictions that I was seeing on there just looked a little bit too cheerful, so I had to balance some of them out with some negative takes. All predictions can't be good, or we're going to be considered fair weather fans, right? So this one's going to be that Alec Pierce and his production is going to dip this upcoming season, and I don't think that's necessarily a knock on Alec Pierce. I think the 7 touchdowns that he had and the 22.3 yards per reception he had, I think those are crazy numbers to expect somebody to get year after year. That 22.3 or whatever that average yards per catch was top in the league. That's not something I expect him to hit again. I think that would be outlandish to expect someone to do that year in and year out. While he does have that skill set, I think not having Joe Flacco on the roster and having Daniel Jones being that primary backup, that is unfortunately, I think going to take some significant snaps this upcoming season. I think that, Daniel Jones is a little bit less adept and a little bit less willing to push the ball downfield than Joe Flacco was. So you're going to get less of those deep shots and those, albeit underthrown deep shots from Joe Flacco to Alec Pierce down there. I think those are just going to be fewer and further in between this upcoming season. So he's not going to get that opportunity to add to that 7 touchdown total that he had this past season. So I'm expecting somewhere maybe similar in terms of yards. I think it was right around 825 that he had this past season. Maybe somewhere around 800 yards again for Alec Pierce. But I'm expecting that touchdown number to dip probably closer to 4. His yards per reception to go down quite a bit. But maybe his receptions go up, and he's used a little bit more in the intermediate passing game, and he kind of rounds out that route tree and becomes that full receiver on the outside and not just a role player that can just be a deep threat.
I mean, he needs to. Alec Pierce needs to be more than just a deep threat because NFL defenses, they adjust. Okay, for example, Richardson's second year, I know that he regressed. He looked bad. Defenses also had enough tape on him to realize we just need to get this guy to throw more. Okay, so there was plenty of tape on Alec Pierce, or there will be plenty of tape on Alec Pierce, and just his numbers: 37 catches, 824 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns, that's just bonkers. 32 of his 37 receptions were for first downs. So I mean, he's not going to have 22.3 yards per catch.
Mm-hmm.
Richardson needs to get better at throwing intermediate passes. Case in point, Alec Pierce needs to get better at using his skill set. By the way, he's fast as hell. He's absolutely a burner. When he gets going, it's really difficult to catch him. So that's one of the reasons he's such a deep threat. But yeah, I love what you said there. I do think that especially if Michael Pittman can return from that fractured back, which not going to take much, and if A.D. Mitchell even remotely starts to blossom, you're not going to see Alec Pierce get targeted 69 times downfield. Okay, so I do expect, I agree with that 100%. And I know that he was electric, but that was just constant deep shots. Like you mentioned, Richardson and Flacco have cannons for an arm, and they both love to just say, the hell with it, and just chuck that thing downfield.
Yeah, and if we're splitting those snaps, I know this is not how we see it, but based on it being an open competition right now, we're kind of operating under the sense that Daniel Jones might take half the snaps at quarterback. We can go into that. I think if that's the case, then yeah, you definitely shouldn't expect all those deep balls to go to Alec Pierce. So just by default, those numbers are going to go down a little bit. And I think, you mentioned Michael Pittman coming back and being a little bit more productive post-injury and being fully recovered. You mentioned A.D. Mitchell. If he can take a step up, then I think that even eats into the production that Alec Pierce is going to have a little bit more. But even more important, I think there's one other guy on the roster who you have a prediction about, and I saw Patrick mention something in the chat, so we can go ahead and jump into our next one there, which I 100% agree with and would have put this down as one of my predictions as well. But you took it first, so happy to have you introduce that.
Yeah, this guy right here, I mean, Reggie Wayne pounded the table for him. He broke the Ballard archetype for what a receiver looks like. And that's just very simply that Josh Downs is going to emerge as the best receiver on this football team. He had two different quarterbacks in 2023. Still played great. Two different quarterbacks again in 2024, one of which was incredibly inaccurate. Couldn't even hit 50% of his passes. Led the team in receptions. Okay. Josh Downs is on track. If Richardson can even moderately put it together, he wins short, he wins intermediate, he wins deep. He's an elusive receiver. He can make you pay in space. He can make you pay if you give him even a lane to run. This is a guy that is a nightmare for a defensive back to handle. And I know that people were talking about, is it him or Tank Dell? It's freaking Josh Downs. We're not even trying to be, impartial here, we're not trying to be biased here. He is one of the best slot receivers in the game any given Sunday. Okay. And I think that his third season with Reggie Wayne, and again, if A.D. Mitchell can even remotely get to where his potential is supposed to be, and Pittman can return to more of, full health, 90-95%, Josh Downs is just going to emerge. He's a quick win option. His route running is so precise that it could cut the air like a knife. I mean, the guy is just absolutely pure with his route running. And there's something to be said about that. So real quick, last season, he only played 14 games, by the way, 72 catches on 107 targets. Yeah. Okay. That is good enough for 67.3% catch efficiency. Keep in mind, he had old man Flacco and Richardson tossing in the pigskin. Before that, he had 69.4%, starting 9 games on 98 targets and 68 catches. I don't know about you, Noah, but the guy also is he's a touchdown guy. He had 5 touchdown receptions despite being like 5'9". So, I mean, I think it's over. I think Josh Downs, I don't even think this is really that bold or too early. I just think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think this is a fair thing to say. I think based on ability, I think he's been wide receiver 1 this past season, the entire season last year. I think he was wide receiver 1 in terms of most reliable option that you can go to. I think this will probably be the year this season where you see the stats kind of take that over, and you see him emerge where it's beyond question and undisputed to the point that the targets, the receptions, the first downs, I think it's all just going to fall into place for him, and he's going to have his best statistical year that he's had, even despite the question marks that the Colts have at quarterback at this situation. I think give him some stable quarterback play, and he would blow up. Unfortunately, the Colts don't have the luxury of giving him that at this point, so they're just going to have to deal with the production that he's able to eke out with whatever quarterback play he ends up getting. Yeah, I think he's been wide receiver 1 in terms of talent. I think this is when you finally start to see it in terms of production.
Yeah, this really wasn't even that hard for me to come up with. So this next one, these next two are going to be really interesting. This is where me and Noah are
Mhm.
contrasting each other, which I love. I love that. But this has to do with a guy the Colts traded up to get in 2024. He played way more snaps on opposite ends of the offensive line than he was probably supposed to. So I'll go ahead and let you roll this one out, and then
Yeah.
the next one is not going to be that much different. But while it's
I'm
not
actually
that different, it is.
I'm actually going to disagree with you. I think I want you to go first here because I do think that your prediction here is what is generally considered to be the most likely thing to happen.
Okay.
So I think you're
Yeah.
probably swinging a bigger bat here. You're more likely to make contact on this prediction. So I do want you to present that, and then I'll just kind of give the contrasting viewpoint here.
Yeah, and that's that Matt Gonsalves is going to start at right guard.
Hmm.
I know that he is he's more on the outside. He played swing tackle. This is a guy, though, that is incredibly intelligent. He was a top 50 pick before he got hurt at Pittsburgh. This guy he's got so much pedigree. And, you fill in for Braden Smith, who's an anchor on that right side in the ground game. And then you've got Bernard Ryman, who is due for an extension. And he filled in for both those guys. Now, while he wasn't otherworldly, he was good given what they were using him for and what he wasn't expected to do. And I just think that Matt Gonsalves is the kind of guy that you can move him on the inside.
Hmm.
You don't have to worry about right guard in the draft. You don't have to worry about picking an offensive lineman like Armand Membu or a Tyler Booker. You don't have to do that. You can use that first round pick for a skill position, whether that's defense or offense, whether it's cornerback, defensive end, tight end, whatever. I think that this makes a lot of sense. I think Matt Gonsalves, they traded up to get the guy for a reason. They love versatility. I think this is a guy who can move inside. And honestly, I don't know if he can replace Will Fries because let's be honest, Will Fries, when he left, sure he was too expensive, but it broke my heart a little bit because the guy
Hmm.
has just done nothing but climb in efficiency. What are your thoughts on Matt Gonsalves moving inside? And do you think that he can be a successor to Will Fries' just utter tenacity at that position?
Yeah, well, yeah. Why don't we just combine our two here? First off, my prediction is contrary to yours, right? But let me just say I agree with everything you just said about Matt Gonsalves, about him being able to jump inside the guard. I think the Colts have seen that in him since they drafted him. They've liked that position versatility. They know he can do it. I think the plan is to do that at the beginning of the season. But my prediction is that he's going to be inserted at right tackle, and I think that's going to be just out of necessity. I think Braden Smith has had some issues staying on the field in the past, and I think that's going to pop up at some point this season. I just think that's too likely to not happen, and I think Gonsalves is immediately going to be, whether no matter how well he has played at right guard and how long he had been there, at that point they're going to immediately bump him out to right tackle, and I think that's where he's going to stick. And be that right tackle, and they're going to find somebody in there on the interior that can play at guard, whether it's a Danny Pinter or a Wesley French that they try to move out there. Marshall Tucker, a guy who played some limited snaps this past year, or Dalton Tucker out of Marshall. I always mix that up because he's from Marshall. But yeah, Dalton Tucker out of Marshall. I think he's a guy that could jump in there and play guard. And I also think in the draft, I think they're more likely to find somebody in round 3, 4 that you're comfortable playing at starting guard. Someone like Tate Ratledge, maybe you can draft and feel comfortable playing. Jackson Slater in the 4th or maybe later in day 3 is somebody that you'd feel comfortable throwing in there at guard. I think you're more likely to find someone that you can play in that spot than you would drafting a tackle in rounds 3 or 4 and feel comfortable bumping him out there if something were to happen to Braden Smith. So I just think, unfortunately, just based on the likelihood and the track record that we've seen from Braden Smith in the past, that Gonsalves is going to end up being the right tackle for the majority of the season next year.
You know what? I don't completely agree, but I somewhat agree because of two reasons. One, Blake Freeland he's just hasn't shown that he is a reliable swing tackle.
Yeah.
And yeah, he got thrown into hellfire and brimstone in his rookie season playing against guys like Trey Hendrickson. I mean, dear Lord, you put even the highest pedigree rookie tackle against a force like Trey Hendrickson. That is just not fair. It's not fair for a rookie. But here's an interesting stat about Braden Smith. His last 3 seasons, he has missed 23 games. Okay, that is so he actually, excuse me, maybe my math is wrong. He missed 1 in 22, 7. Okay, so he's missed 13 games, not 23. He's missed 13 games in the last 3 seasons, but he's missed, let me see here. My math is terrible. Oh, he's missed 12 games in the last 2. So that was 7 and 23. That's why Blake Freeland had to play so much. And then he missed 5 last season. Now, regardless of the personal matter, Braden Smith can't stay healthy anymore. And the more you get hurt as an offensive lineman, the tougher it is to keep your efficiency higher. And it's going to happen in the offensive trenches. There's so much that the defensive linemen and the offensive linemen, they're just constantly ramming into each other. So you're going to have, I think, arguably the most injuries in those positions. But I like that because Matt Gonsalves, I mean, he played over 500 snaps last season with a combination of left and right, and he just took them all in stride. So that's one of the reasons I picked right guard for the guys, because I think he can just take outside of center and left guard because Nelson's there. No one's taking that from Quentin. But I just think you could put him anywhere, left tackle, as long as it makes sense. Left tackle, right guard. But I wouldn't be surprised if he plays another load of snaps, especially on that right side.
Yeah, I think, it's not really an argument and just kind of presenting two separate sides of things that could happen depending on how injuries unfold and things like that. But yeah, I think him being in there at right guard, I think that's the safest place for him. I think he'd be a little bit less likely to be exposed there. So if you're just basing it on the top 5 linemen, I think he's going to be in that top 5. It just depends on where you put him. I think that combination is ideal there with Braden Smith there at right tackle and Matt Gonsalves at guard. I think that obviously plays to both of their strengths. I just worry that out of necessity, man, you're going through a whole NFL season. The Colts were dead last in terms of continuity on the defense or on the offensive line last season.
They were.
I don't expect them to be dead last again, but that just shows you're going to have some ups and downs. People are going to have to move somewhere. Maybe Bernard Ryman goes down. I mean, God forbid. But then Gonsalves is going to be bumping out to tackle. You got to find some options at guard. It's just good that he's a versatile piece that they moved up in the draft for. That you feel comfortable putting at multiple positions.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, real quick to just briefly describe what Noah's talking about, there was a graphic that was appalling, and it was really alarming. They did the top 32 most consistent offensive lineman lineups and who played the most snaps as a 5-man unit together. Indianapolis was dead last, man. They had so many injuries, and Matt Gonsalves was weirdly a beneficiary, I think, of some of those, because you were able to see what he can provide. But this last one is going to take up the rest of our time. We're not going to have any news and rumors. There's really not anything too crazy to talk about. So this is actually Noah's, and I love it because everybody's going to be like, the hopefuls are going to be like, I can see that happening. And the people who are detractors are going to be like, I can definitely see that happening. So Noah, just go ahead and roll it out. I'll pull up the banner here.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe this is a pessimistic view, but I think this is honestly probably what a lot of fans are hoping for, right? at least at the end of this season, they were. I mean, it's not good news for what's going to happen in the upcoming season. Yeah, this prediction, definitely too early, but I genuinely do believe this is how things are going to end up going, and that's that the Colts will part ways with Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen on Black Monday at the end of next season. It's the same day that Jim Irsay issued that statement this year saying Chris Ballard wasn't going to be fired. I think we're going to get the opposite coming up at the end of 2025, just because I think they just have to climb so much of a mountain, I think, to be able to justify keeping their jobs. Shane Steichen, I think, has a little bit of a longer leash just because the time that he's been here has been shorter. But again, I mean, if you're moving on from Chris Ballard, I don't see how Shane Steichen not having success in terms of playoff appearances or playoff wins in 3 seasons. I don't know how you can back that as a resume and hold on to him throughout a GM change. I think it would just make sense to purge it all and start over. And it really comes down to what Jim Irsay expects the results to be at the end of the 2025 season. I think it's probably been pretty clear clearly laid out in front of Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard what needs to happen for the for them to retain their jobs. I mean that's going to be a mystery to us. I think we can just kind of speculate. I think just based off of the statements that he's made in this offseason, that he's been very clear that the performances that the Colts have had in the past are not up to the standard that he wants the organization to be held to, and they were a play away from the playoffs, so obviously that's not good enough. So anything short of the playoffs or playoff wins, I think we can expect them to move on. And just with the roster and where it is, and unfortunately the quarterback situation that the Colts have, I don't see them really taking a step beyond what 8-9, 9-8, and kind of hovering around that range and kind of being similar to where they were these past two seasons. I think that record is going to show up again how it's been, and I don't think Chris Ballard has changed his ways, right, this season or this offseason, in the way that he's approached it and the way he's been acquiring talent. But I don't think you can change 8 years of the same old thing in one offseason and get the results you want immediately. So I think that leash is just going to be a little bit too short. They're not going to get where they need to go this upcoming season. We're going to deal with another middling team that we're watching, and Jim Irsay is going to have no choice but to move on and clean house.
Yeah, and there hasn't been like a concrete expectation set, but basically, I would dare say you need to win the division.
Yeah.
It's a very winnable division, people. I know the Texans are the Texans. I know C.J. Stroud was Rookie of the Year. I know that put up absolutely gaudy numbers. A little bit of regression last season. They still won the division. The Colts have the talent to beat the Texans, and they absolutely sure as hell have the talent to beat the Jags and the Titans. And if they don't win that division, what are you playing for?
Yeah.
If they finish 11-6, they're winning the division. They could not win the division and be like, I mean, I guess it could be 11-6. That'd be really weird, but you could be 10-7. But the bare minimum is playoffs.
Yeah.
If you don't make the playoffs, there is no reason to keep Shane Steichen. There's no reason to keep Chris Ballard, especially the latter. You're talking about year number 9 with this guy, and he's made the playoffs twice, and one was with a generational quarterback that's one of the most complete prospects we've ever seen. And then another one is one of the most savvy veterans that had no arm strength anymore, but he was just able to complete passes. He was able to navigate the pocket without having any mobility in Phillip Rivers. So Ballard has to make this happen more than Steichen, but I can't see them being like, hey, Shane, we're going to give you one more year. We're going to give a general manager a fresh one, a brand new start, and they keep AR. I don't think that that's going to happen. And you know what? Super Pony here, I love what you said. They can win the division with just average quarterback play.
Yeah.
Okay, you had Flacco did what he could. He's so old by NFL standards and just so limited. He did what he could, but he wasn't fast enough to deal with the pressure. He wasn't. He was too safe. Even though the guy's got a cannon, he loves himself some checkdowns. Yeah. He's like a checkdown god. And then Richardson couldn't hit the broadside of a frickin' barn if it was within 20 yards of him and the line of him and placing his foot down to throw. So if you even get something out of Richardson that is resembling what you selected him number 4 overall for, you can win this division. 2 of the 4 teams have not had success. They have just not had success, and especially the Titans. They've been cheeks. They just haven't been good. And then the Texans are a fringe team, and they showed it last year that they're susceptible to losing games. Yeah. So I agree with that. It's going to be on the quarterback, but I will say that Shane Steichen is tied directly to Anthony Richardson, and if he goes out there and he falls apart and they put Daniel Jones in, and he also kind of sort of falls apart and looks like Danny Dimes, which is the dumbest nickname for someone that's played like him. I can't believe he's been given that moniker. What a ridiculous nickname. If he plays more like the Danny Dimes of the Giants days, minus 2022, when he was actually efficient with the football, this is over. They're tearing it down from the studs. They're probably going to keep Lou Anarumo. I wouldn't be surprised if they kept a guy like Jim Bob Cooter. I think that he's a good offensive coordinator. But Shane Steichen also calls the plays. So it's going to be interesting. But real quick, I will say, what are your expectations? What do you think that they have to do? Record, playoffs, division? AR's progression. What do you
Yeah.
think has to happen for these two guys to stay and, keep their
Yeah.
jobs?
Yeah, I do want to hit Super Ponies, just kind of nailing all my thoughts before I get them out there. He's talking about they can win the division with just average quarterback play. He mentioned that that's probably more likely going to come from Daniel Jones than it is going to come from Anthony Richardson.
Oh
Just
God.
because when you drafted Anthony Richardson, you weren't drafting a guy to get average quarterback play. I think that's true that you can win the division with an average quarterback. They were very close with Gardner Minshew to winning that division. But then yeah, you draft Anthony Richardson 4 overall, you're going boomer bust there. I don't think he has the ability to be an average quarterback. I think it's going to be what you saw last year, where he's bottom of the league in efficiency and his accuracy, or he's going out there and consistently making those big plays, like you saw that deep bomb to Alec Pierce against the Texans in Week 1 that had everybody so excited. He's a boomer bust kind of guy. It's just unfortunate that we're in here in year 3 and the bust is looking a little bit more likely than the boom. I think you're muted, Drake.
He was 9 for 19 in that
Yeah.
game against the Texans, where he hit one of those big throws. And I think he still threw a pick. We got to end with this one, but it is from the one and only, the chief financial officer of this show, and that's Patrick Wright. If the Colts win the division by a tiebreaker and lose via blowout, okay, in the first round with a top 5 defense and bottom 8 offense, what do they do? I think Ballard is gone. I think Steichen is also gone. And I think JBC is gone, Jim Bob Cooter.
Yeah.
Maybe even Cam Turner, the QB coach. I would assume the prominent guys from the offensive staff are gone, except for Tony Sperano. I mean, given what he had to deal with last year, I'd say he did pretty good. Lou stays. The defensive, top 5 defense. Oh, man. You got to keep them, and Lou's only 1 year in with Steichen. So I think that he can adjust. That's my prediction, is they're going to keep Lou, the defensive staff. They would get rid of Ballard. They would get rid of Steichen, JBC, Cam Turner, Richardson. I think that you would see a cleansing, if you will, of the QB and the offensive coaching staff.
I actually think they would keep Chris Ballard if they win the division. Even if it's by a tiebreaker and they have a blowout, we know how much Jim Irsay loves Chris Ballard beyond the love that any owner has for any GM. I think if you give him any leash or modicum of success or indication that the Colts are doing well or going in the right direction, he's going to take that excuse to stick with Chris Ballard. So yeah, I think a division win, I think you hang that banner up and you keep Chris Ballard and you keep going. I think so that's how Jim Irsay would go. I mean, what a bottom 8 offense there. I think you make some changes on the offensive staff. I think Shane Steichen's probably still around. I don't think you fire your head coach after that, winning the division after the lack of success that they've had. But yeah, I think Jim Bob Cooter, Cam Turner, those kind of guys are going to be looking for jobs elsewhere at that point.
Very fair. Very fair. Well, we have so many comments here, but guys, we do have to end this show. It is over an hour. Which is nothing new. But look, at the end of the day, this is a team that has to succeed. This is a team where Richardson has to take a step. If Jones is in there starting most of the year, that ain't good for number 5. And you are expecting, I know we haven't talked about this much, but you're expecting Lou Anarumo to do something with this defense. Like, they have to go out there and actually play better football. They stunk it up against the pass last year. They just weren't good. And at times you were like, what the hell are they even doing? But you've got a lot of expectations for this football team. I would dare say they have to at least get 10 wins. Even if you go into the playoffs 9-8 and you get blown out, who knows what will happen. But that's our show. Thank you so much, everybody. Patrick Wright with the Super Chat. But we had Tina, we had Tony, we had Super Pony, we had DSG Goodbar, we had Tracy Johnson. I mean, my goodness, we had so many people. Of course, Sean Conkright, the guys that bring the juice, Derek and Cody, a couple of legends over there. There's a reason they're so successful. Go check them out. And then, of course, Chet Men. Fantastic show, guys. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like the Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Follow Indianapolis Colts on SI on X. And that is at Colts _SI. Subscribe to Horseshoe Huddle on YouTube and click that bell to turn on those notifications so you don't miss anything. Want to listen to the Horseshoe Huddle podcast? No worry at all. Subscribe to us on Apple, on Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts so that you can soak up the content Guys, we will be back on Monday. We hope you have a wonderful weekend. We appreciate you sticking in there with us. We had certain things go on. My internet sucked because of the storms. Noah had some stuff going on too. It was just absolute pandemonium. But we really appreciate you guys sticking with us and still choosing to listen to the Horseshoe Huddle, watch the Horseshoe Huddle. So everyone have a wonderful Thursday, a wonderful Friday, a great weekend, and we will be seeing you all again at the start of next week.